Hey everyone, it's Monica. Well, I wanted to go ahead and show you how I bound this journal. I know I've been sharing this with you in my lives and also on Instagram, and I promised that I would show you how I did that kettle stitch. Now, the kettle stitch is great because typically most of my journals, I put the paper and the signature kind of stacked like I'm showing you now. But with these file folders, they're a little bit more bulky and a little bit more thick. So the kettle stitch allows you just to place your signatures or your folders right next to each other and stitch them together. And then when you open it up, you can see that you have your stitches on the inside holding each file folder together, but they're not stacked so you don't get the bulkiness. And the kettle stitch is an older stitch. It's a stitch that many bookbinders have used in the past. So it's very secure. So that's what I wanted to show you today, is how I put these file folders together using the kettle stitch. So I found the procedure on another YouTube channel, and I'll make sure that I link that below because I'm sure that they are very much more proficient than I am in probably explaining the kettle stitch, and that way if you still are confused after my video, I'll have another reference for you to take a look at, which is the one that I used. So I found that when I'm binding these together, I wanted to have as many stitches as possible because I wanted my book to be secure. This is going to hold a lot of ephemera pieces, it's going to hold paper dolls, and it's going to be a little bit bulky, so I wanted to make sure it was secure. So I poked 5 holes evenly, starting from the middle, and then I just went out, I believe, an inch. All right, so when you start to do your stitch, the first thing you're going to do is tie the end of the knot and then just weave in and out of your holes. The first part is pretty easy. As you can see, I'm just kind of going through each hole, going in and then coming out on the other side. And then when you get to the end, you're going to do the same exact thing, go in the other direction. Now, the thread that I'm using is wax thread, and wax thread is great because it will help go through the paper really easy without getting stuck. And these needles that I'm using are especially for binding journals and books, and I'll make sure that I link these in the description box below if you're interested in getting just a beginner kit. All right, so as you can see, I'm having no problem going through this first part very easily. I'm at the end of my journal card here. And now I want to go ahead and loop it and create a knot because we're going to want to come back to the outside again. So when you're at the end, you're going to just go ahead and put your needle underneath the thread to be able to create a loop, and then you're just going to create a knot. And the reason for this is because you're going to put your thread back through that same hole. So you want to make sure you have a knot to ensure the thread won't come out at the end. So as you can see, I'm just getting my needle, I'm going under the last thread there, and then I'm going through the loop, and then I'm tying a knot. And then once you have your knot, you want to put your needle back through the same hole, so that way you're on the outside and you're ready to attach your second file card. All right, so once you have your knot in place, and you're going to go ahead and put your needle right through that same hole, and now you're going to be back at your starting point. Now here's where it's going to get a little bit more difficult. I wouldn't say hard, but you're going to have to maneuver 2 file folders. So you're just going to have to make sure as you're threading your needle, you are keeping your string tight. So I'm taking my needle and I'm going through my very first hole. And again, I'm pulling these tight, and then I'm going to come back up through the second hole. Now, once I have it through the second hole, this is where we're going to start to loop around the first thread. So I'm going to get my needle and I'm going to go underneath the left part of the thread. And then I'm going to come back around to the right part of the thread, keeping that loop, because this is the loop where we're going to put the needle through that loop and we're going to pull it to tie the knot. And that's what attaches your signatures. So now you have a knot, and you're going to go back down through the hole of your second file folder. And you're going to just kind of repeat this process all the way through. So you're going back down. You've got a knot, so it's not going to have the thread pull through. You're going to go back down, keeping your thread tight, making sure your thread doesn't come off of your needle like mine did. And then you're going to come back through the third hole and do the same process. taking your needle, going underneath the left part of the string, keeping your loop, coming back up through the right part of the string through the loop and pulling tight to make that knot, and then going back through the hole of your second file folder. And you're going to do this all the way until you get to the end. So once you get in your groove, you're going to find that this kettle stitch isn't difficult. The most important part is, of course, just to make sure you're pulling your string tight and that your signatures are secure. But it's really an easy stitch, just going underneath the left part of the string, back underneath the right part, keeping your loop, and then putting your needle through the loop to create the knot. And you're going to do that all the way to the end. Now, once you get to the last hole, obviously you're not going to have two sets of strings to go under on the left side and the right side. So you're going to come through that hole, put your needle underneath the string on the left side, and then just go right underneath that loop to create your knot. And then once you have your knot secured, then you're ready to start on your third signature. Okay, so now we're ready to add this third file folder, and it's going to be a little bit different. I mean, you're going to start out the same. You're going to go ahead and take your needle, put it through that first hole, and then you're going to want to make sure when you start out you have enough thread so you're not running out of thread like I'm doing here. And then you're going to take your needle and come up through that second hole. Now, instead of going underneath the two sides of that knot, you're going to put your needle into the knot. So there's a knot there, and you're going to essentially get your needle underneath that knot like I'm doing here, which is the knot on the second file folder, and then you're going to tie a knot. So instead of looping on the left side and the right side, you're putting your needle underneath that knot, and then you are putting your needle through the knot to tie another knot, if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. There's the knot right there. And then once you have that knot, then you're going to put your needle back through the same hole. So essentially on each hole, you're going to put your needle underneath that knot you had created before and create another knot to attach your third file folder. Here I'm going to go again. I'm coming up through the hole. I'm putting the needle through that second file folder knot, keeping my loop, because I'm going to put my needle through my loop to create my knot. And there I am putting the needle through the loop to create the knot. And then I'm going to do that all the way until I get to the end, putting my needle back through the hole and then coming back up through the last hole to do the same thing. Now this is where you can see how it's really important to make sure you start out with enough thread. I am coming up kind of tight here. I end up tying a knot at the end because I can't keep the thread on the needle. So you want to make sure when you're starting out that you do have enough thread to get you through as many signatures as you're going to need. Now, it's not the end of the world if you run out of string. You can always tie a knot and then just continue, but it's certainly going to be a little bit smoother if you're able to do this all with one string. And then when I get to the end, I'm going to go ahead and I end up tying the knot without the needle because I just don't have enough room to be able to pull that thread through. But I do want to make sure I have a last knot to secure my third signature. And then we're ready to add the fabric tape to the outside just to cover it up. All right, so once you have all three of your file folders together, or as many as you want to add, then you're ready to go ahead and add your fabric tape binding. Now, before you add your fabric tape, as you can see, I've covered the front and the back panel because this fabric tape is going to go over your designer paper. So you're going to want to make sure at minimum you add the front and the back designer paper, and then you're ready to add your binding. A lot of times when I'm doing these little journals, I'll actually put all of my paper on this and then I'll do my binding. You may not want to wait till you have your little book completely full because then it's going to be really bulky and it might be kind of hard to actually put your fabric tape on at that point. But it's just a matter of cutting your fabric tape and then lining it up in the center, so that way when you fold it over on the front and the back, that you have the same amount of fabric tape. There's really no special trick to this. It's just a matter of eyeballing it and then trying to get it exactly lined up as I'm doing here. So once you have it lined up, then you just want to pull tight and have it cover the back spine and go towards your back. And as you can see, this fabric tape is real sticky. It is a little forgiving, so if you have to pull it off, if you don't have it straight the first time, it is a little forgiving, but you probably don't want to do that very many times because that will affect the integrity of the stickiness. So I hope that I've given you at least some indication and some step-by-step tutorial on how I put together my file folders using the Kettle Stitch. I am by no means an expert at this stitch. I actually had a video that I watched, and I'll make sure I link that below. So if for any reason I confused you on this process, you can check out the video that I used to create my stitch. And I hope you have a lot of fun decorating your journal and using these cute little file folders. All right, everybody, thanks so much for stopping by and bearing through my process, and we'll see you again next time.